right, so it is Monday. It is past 7 o'clock, which means it's time to draw things in Fusion 360. Today, by request, we are going to make a dispenser for doggy bags. This is a highly valuable thing to know how to do because people got dogs and everybody's dog poops. And so we have said bags, and I think the best way to start is by, let's model the bags themselves, or at least a representation of the bags. We're not going to model each sheet. That would be a little overkill. But we can model a nice cylinder. So let's go ahead and, you know what, I'm going to make this into multiple components. This is supposed to be a beginner class, but normally we don't do components in beginner classes, but I think we'll all be able to handle it. So I'm going to start by clicking on Create, and I'm going to create a new component right off the bat. And this new component, I am going to name my dog bags, because this is just going to be just the bags. Bags only. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. All right, and now inside of that component, I am going to create a sketch. And that sketch, so I'll click on Create, Create Sketch. I'm going to draw, it doesn't really matter, I guess, what plane we start this on, but I tend to draw on the top. So I'm going to draw on the top plane, so I'll imagine my cylinder standing upright like this. And the two circles that we are going to draw are, maybe we should make room for more bag here, because this one may be partially empty. I'm going to go with a 1 inch circle. So I'll click on Create and then Circle, and I'm going to make a center diameter circle here. And I'm going to locate that center diameter circle right at the middle of my drawing world, right at the origin there. And I'm going to make it 1 inch. Now, tell you what, it's worth noting. Let's try this. Let's add a parameter here, because I don't really know that all dog bags are the same diameter, right? So I might want to have a parameter that I can easily change later. So if I go to the store and I buy some dog bags and they're a different size, it is not difficult for me to change the size of this cylinder. So I'm going to click on Modify. I'm going to come down to Change Parameters. Now to change your user parameters, or to add user parameters, we just have to click on this little plus button. So what this will do is we'll let us name our parameter, and this is our bag. We can't put spaces in there. It's our bag OD. It's the outer diameter of our bag. That seems like a decent name. And I'm going to start with 1 inch as my value there. And I can even put a comment here if I forget, if I'm going to look back at this later and go, what is bag OD? It is the outer diameter of the dog bag roll.
I'm right here. Chill.
Romeo, we're making you something. You gotta love that we're making dog bags and we can hear dogs in the background. You know that this is for purpose. And then the inner roll here, I wonder if we need that inner roll. I'm gonna model it anyway. The inner cylinder of my dog bags here, I'm gonna make a new user parameter here, and this is my bag ID, my inner diameter, and the inner diameter is 0.29, which is a weird number, 0.29. I wonder, it is 5/16. 5/16 exactly. So, you know, you could also type in 5/16. That is a totally fine thing to do, and I'll enter a comment here as well. It is the inner diameter of the bag roll. And then last but not least, I'm going to have one more parameter, and I'm going to make that parameter the length of this dog bag roll cylinder. So the length of this cylinder is, for me, is 2 and 11/32. It's about 60 millimeters, which, you know, is a more round number for sure. But well, we've been drawn in freedom units, so why stop now? So the length, I'm going to have a brand new user parameter here, and this is going to be my bag, I don't know, size, let's call it. And it is 2.36, and it is my roll size. All right, cool. So, good on entering user parameters? Are we still entering away? Or are you on board?
Good.
You good? All right. All right, and then I'm going to click Okily Dokily. All right, so now that I've got my user parameters here, I'm going to start using them. So this is my bag outer diameter here, so you can see when I start typing in bag, and it pulls up the list of user parameters that start with the letter B there. So bag outer diameter, and then if I make another cylinder, another circle, sorry, that is my bag inner diameter. Now I can say finish sketch. So we've got our first sketch made here inside of our dog bag component. I'm going to go ahead and name that sketch. It's always a good idea. Name your sketches, name your bodies. This is going to be my bag size. That's my bag size sketch. Anything is better than sketch 1 or sketch 2. Alright, so now if I click on the extrude button, we can extrude out this shape. So this shape is going to be our bag size. Is that what I said? Yeah, bag size. It is going to be a distance of bag size. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to think a little bit ahead here. I am probably going to want to create a mirror at some point here, and I've got, when I want to create a mirror, I like to think a little bit ahead and try to be lazy. If I have planes that can live right in the middle of an object, I kind of like that if I'm going to be doing a mirror, because then I won't have to create them later. So instead of a direction that is one side here, instead of extruding this, the distance of bag size to one side, I'm going to choose to extrude it symmetrically. And then I'm going to change my measurement, what do you call it? Measurement type, let's call that. So instead of half length, I'm going to change it to whole length. So that way the bag size length will be across the whole length of the extrusion there. And then I'm going to say OK. All right, so now I have got a body to name. So I'm going to click on that body, and I'm going to name it Dog Bag Roll. That is my roll of dog bags. All right, so I would really like, I'm thinking we're going to make this a bone shape, because I think that makes sense. I see a lot of other, do you agree bone shape is what we're thinking? Or do you want to see it something else? Like, what are other shapes that a dog bag dispenser could be?
Straight cylindrical.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm going to try to do a dog bone shape. All right, so I'm going to hide my dog bag sketch because I don't need to see it anymore. And I am going to change the active component here. So right now, we started off by making a new component, and we made it a component that was called dog bags. And when we made a new component, it automatically made it the active component. So you can tell it's the active component because it's got this little radio button checked. So when I make a new sketch, when I take a sketch and turn it into a three-dimensional body, it will make that inside of whatever my active component is, right? So because my dog bag is my active component, so if I were to say create and create another new component here, it would make that new component inside of my dog bags component. And I don't really want to do that. What I'd like to do is create another new component inside of my main document component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the little radio button where it says unsaved there, because I have yet to save this document, because I like living on the edge, living dangerously, you know. And now that I've made my unsaved component, my main document component, my active component, now I can click on create and I can make a new component. All right, so this component is going to be our bag dispenser, bag holder. Can be our bag holder. And I'm going to say okay. All right, so now what I'd like to do here is I'm going to start by, how am I going to make a bone shape? I'm going to start by making, I'm going to want to make it threaded, but, so it needs to be a cylinder eventually. Tell you what, let's try this. Let's create a new sketch. I'm going to draw that sketch kind of like on the plane that would cut my roll in half this way. So we want to cut our roll in half like this, not like this, but cut our roll in half like this. So we're looking directly at the side of the roll when we create our new sketch inside of our bag holder component. And because my original cylinder, I chose to extrude it symmetrically, so my cylinder is kind of like right in the middle of my origin here, I am going to choose to make a center rectangle. So I'm kind of drawing the container around our cylinder here. And whenever I base something on user parameters, I try to have everything based on those user parameters. So we want the entirety of our drawing to be based around the size of the bags that we happen to have. So my width here, where it's wanting me to specify my width, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the width of this rectangle is going to be our bag OD, and then I'm going to add a 1/4 of an inch. So 1/8 of an inch on each side. Actually, I I'm going to add a 1/2 of an inch because I'm going to eventually make a shell around this. So I'm going to add a 1/2 of an inch. And then my width, or my height of my cylinder, my height is going to be my bag size. And again, plus, I'm going to go with another 1/2 of an inch there. And this is a good starting point. I can always change those numbers later, but adding a 1/2 of an inch, again, because I want to account for some wall thickness there that I'm going to end up having. And then I'm going to hit OK. All right, so that is the cylinder part of our dog bone here. So the next step here is I want to make the bone bits, the bony bits. And I wonder if I want to do that with a cylinder. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and click on Create. And I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of circles. So I'm going to grab a couple of center diameter circles. I am going to click and place them somewhere in here. And 1.5 inches seems like a decent number here. And if I add a couple of lines that protrude out from the middle of our rectangle, I've got some lines that I can use as mirror lines. So I can take that circle and I can mirror it over those lines. So I'll grab my mirror tool, I'm going to click on Create, and then come down to Mirror. I'm going to mirror that one circle over that line, and I'm going to mirror this other circle over that line right there. I think that might be dog bone-ish. That is certainly dog bone adjacent. And now, if we wanted to, we could, mess with the size or the diameter of this circle, just to change it up a little bit. And actually, if our cylinder is 1.5, I think I want this to be 1.5 as well. I think I want it to be the same diameter as our cylinder. And then one last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide my circles in half, because I think I'm going to create these with revolves. Famous last words, but we're going to give this a try with revolves to make the kind of the ends of my dog bone, and I think I'll probably make the whole thing with a revolve. So I'm going to divide my circle in half, and I probably should have done that before I chose to mirror my circles. So now I'm doing a second mirror operation. This is not really ideal, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So the end product is the same. I have my objects mirrored. However, all these little icons that we see here, this is a mirror constraint. So this little object here is a mirror constraint. It's showing me the two things that it is mirroring here. And I can actually, I believe, edit a mirror if I can find the right constraint. If I double click on one of these things, does it let me edit it? Maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. It does not. Some of those little icons you can double click on and they will let you edit them, but a mirror is not like that. So, all right, moving on. I'm going to go ahead and say, actually, I'm going to divide my cylinder in half. So I'm just going to draw a line from the top midpoint of the top of my cylinder down to the bottom midpoint. And you can see I'm getting the little blue triangle that pops up here, and that's what's telling me I'm snapping right to the middle. And then I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. So that's where I'm at in my dog bone. Let me kind of take a peek. How you doing?
Okay.
Oh yeah, cool. Hey buddy. Hey. Well, make it look cool. Yeah. Yeah. Now, something you'll notice is I often talk about keeping a sketch fully constrained. And that is not the sketch that we are looking at right now. And mainly right now our sketch is not fully constrained because I'm not sure this is the sketch that I'm going to want. So it's hard to imagine for me what this shape is going to look like in 3 dimensions once I start revolving things. So I'm probably going to want to be able to move these circles around and have them in a different spot. But I don't know where that spot is right now, so I'm going to leave them kind of unconstrained. I might come back and constrain them later if I really like the result, but just by adding some dimensions or some constraints that set dimensions from like the center point, for example. I could dimension things from the center point, and I might come back and do that. But for now, we are going to name our sketch inside of our dog bag holder. Instead of sketch 1, I'm going to call this the holder, or the bone holder. It's as good a name as any. All right, so now in order to actually make this a 3-dimensional shape, I'm thinking that we're going to do this all with revolves. So if I come up and choose from my Create menu the Revolve option, and I choose all the things that are on one side of my, just the cylinder part, just the rectangle part, all the 1/2 of my rectangle. And as the axis to revolve around, we're going to choose that center line. And it'll go ahead and make that up for us. And I'm going to say OK. And now I'm going to do that a couple more times. So I'm going to come up to my Create menu. I'm going to choose the Revolve option. I'm going to pick... Actually, you know what? I bet I could get away with doing both of these at once, because they have the same axis. Let's see if it'll let us do that. Sure will. Now, you'll notice it is defaulting here to an operation of cut, and we actually don't want that. We want our operation to be a join. We're going to join them together. And I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to do that one more time. So I'll click Create. And then I'll come back to Revolve. I'll choose the other halves of the other side of my circle. And as an axis to revolve around, I'll choose that middle there. And I'll go ahead and say OK. Oh, hey, I forgot to change the operation. So it has cut out a shape. So now you should panic and just start all over, because there's no going back. No. So down at the bottom, if you accidentally make a mistake, see, this is a learning experience, a teachable moment here. If we right-click on the feature, if I just click on the feature in my timeline, you can see that it is highlighting what that feature is or what it did. So down in the bottom of my screen, this is our feature timeline. If I right-click on that revolve, I can come back and edit that feature. And our edit feature window, was the revolve window. I can now choose to say join. It's interesting. It is, why is it doing that? That's weird. Edit feature. Something happened there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that feature. And we're going to try that again. Create. Revolve. I'm going to select the axis. I'm going to choose join. And I'm going to say OK. Alright, cool. So, this is close. This is pretty close. Not bad. Something I would like to do here is I'd like to get rid of where I'd like the ends of my dog bone to be the largest part, or at least I don't want to have this little flat part here. And I think the way that I'm going to get around that is I'm going to modify my cylinder a little bit. So if I come back and edit the bone holder sketch, so I can either right click on the bone holder sketch in my timeline, in my feature timeline, and say edit sketch, or I can right click on the bone holder sketch in my sketches folder and say edit sketch. I'm going to add in a line that goes from where my circle intersects, this is just kind of a guess, where my circle intersects the top part of that inner cylinder to where my circle intersects the side of that cylinder. If I add that in on the top and bottom, and I'm just going to, again, mirror that feature, so I make sure I draw it exactly the same. So I just kind of chose to mirror over a feature. If I can highlight what I've done, I kind of separated my sides a little bit, kind of cut off the ends of my cylinder so I don't have such a hard angle over there. We won't have to worry about intersecting with our dog bag because the bulbs of our cylinder are already bigger than that. So it already gives us a little bit more volume inside of there than we need. But now if I say finish sketch, I'll need to modify that extrusion. So let me turn off this sketch just so actually I'm going to need to see it eventually. It didn't change anything. And that is because we will need to modify our original extrusion to reflect the new geometry that we want to unselect here. So if I just click on the feature in my timeline, you can see that this is indeed the feature that I want to change. Now, if, for example, you wanted to share this document with the world and you wanted to make it easier for everybody in the world to change these things, you know I like naming stuff. So in addition to like naming your sketches, naming your bodies, you can also name the features in your feature timeline. So just by right-clicking on the feature in your feature timeline, I can name it from Revolve 1 to main body bag holder. I can name it a whole bunch of stuff. And now, if I hover over it, it tells me main body bag holder. which is pretty cool. So you can make it really easy for somebody else to figure out how to edit your document here. If you're working in a team, or you just want to remind yourself, give yourself future notes, you know, future you. Let's see here. So now if I click on each one of the things I want to revolve, and then the center axis that I want to revolve it around. There we go, that's better. That is much better, I think. That looks, I feel like that looks bone-like. The last thing that I'm going to do to make this kind of bone-like is I'm going to turn off my sketch. I don't want to have this hard edge here. Actually, I kind of don't want to have any of these hard edges. So I think I'm going to come up to my Modify menu, and I'm just going to add a couple of fillets. So I'm going to give the cylinder edges a little fillet here. Ooh, it won't let me. It'll only let me do a very small. Doesn't need to be huge. Just needs to smooth out a little bit. So 0.4, I'm sure will be plenty. You can add different sized fillets all at the same time. This is the option that I'm going to go with here. I'm going to click on the little plus button here in my fillet window, and I can select other edges. Like, for example, the edges that come around my bone. And I can give those a little fillet as well, just to make it look a little bit more. Oh, something weird is going on there. I don't like what that's doing. We're gonna undo that. I might just leave that as is, or sometimes the order in which you fillet things can make a difference. So if I choose to fillet all these things first, I wonder if that'll make a difference in the overall look. And I'll make that, try and make that 0.2. Yeah, there we go. What if I make it 0.25? Alright. And now, can I add another fillet? Sure can. In fact, before it let me make a 0.4. Well, let me make a 0.4, but let me make a 0.3. So I'll take it. Oop. Click on my edges here. Now, I suppose the other thing we could think about doing is we could have filleted that in our sketch. We could have curved that feature in our sketch. But I'm fine with the way this looks here. Just know that you could have added a curve to that feature in the sketch. Probably would have been equally as fine. Your dog, I'm sure your dog does not care when you add your fillets to the thing that you pick up his shit in. So, all right. Cool. Are you there with me? We're moving in the right direction?
Made a mistake on my cylinder, and I'm trying to figure out how to catch.
Yeah. Oh yeah, cool. Oh, your inner cylinder?
My inner cylinder, yeah.
Ah. What was your issue?
I want to shrink the diameter down.
Ah. So that sketch, the bone holder sketch,
Yeah.
you can shrink it down there, right? I think I added 0.5 to mine. That's probably overkill. You know, like we're probably going to have a less than 1/8 of an inch shell. Maybe it'll be 1/8 of an inch shell. So you could probably get away with 1.25. Just leave a whole lot of room for the bags. They kind of get crammed in there, but
Okay.
yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah, I got stuff.
So now we're gonna do a miraculous activity here. In fact, hopefully this is not too complicated a shape for Enfusion won't swear at us all. So what we're gonna try to do here is, here I got a body that I need to name, don't I? Body 1, this is our holder. So now what we're going to attempt here is to create a shell with our body. So from the modify menu, you can find the shell command. It's like the 6th from the top there. I'm sorry, not scale, shell. Shell is 4th from the top. What the shell command will allow us to do is to create an opening or create a hollow body. It'll hollow out the inside of our body. And what I'm going to do to create my shell is, sometimes when you make a shell, you want to click on the faces that you want to be your open faces. Or if you want your whole body to be a shell and have no open faces, you click on the body in the bodies folder. And then you specify a thickness of your shell. And the thickness of my shell is going to be 2 millimeters. You probably don't really need a whole lot of thickness here. And then I'm going to say, oakley dokley. So now we have hollowed out the inside of our body, but we can't tell right now. So in order to be able to tell, let's go ahead and let's cut our body into 2. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to make an offset plane. Nope, I'm not. I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut it right in the middle. In order to cut our body in half, in the modify menu, you can find an option called split body. A split body lets us cut a body in half if we have a surface or a plane. So if you see here, this is a curved surface that it is showing an example of. And that is because we could make a curved plane in the surface menu or in the surface workspace, and we could cut our body with a curved surface. But in our case, we just want to split our holder body with the plane that is right in the middle of our world there. What's that plane that divides things in half like that? And I'm going to cut it in half this way. And then I'm going to say, okay. Now that we have 2 bodies, now we can turn one off and we can actually see that it is indeed hollow, which is great. All right. So now comes the fun part. So now I'm going to thread this component to this holder here. So I'm going to go ahead and change the names. This is my bottom half, and I'm going to call this other side my top half. Now we can add threads pretty easily here in Fusion. And I have mixed results with 3D printing threads. It takes some trial and error. It can be a love-hate relationship, but if I choose from the Create menu, go ahead and choose Create, and then come down to Thread, and I choose this interface of my cylinder, I can choose a thread type. And I'm going to choose modeled threads. Warning, fillet chamfer cannot be created. Why don't you try adjusting the size? I'm not trying to create a fillet chamfer. It really doesn't want to do that, does it? Doesn't want to do that at all. Create thread right in there. Nope. And so my guess is what is happening here is, because I've got these curved surfaces on the inside of my model, I wonder if I choose to not make it fully threaded. I choose that, and I don't choose fully threaded, and I bring this up. Nope, I bring this up, which is the thing I need to bring up here. Yeah, it doesn't want to do that at all. So plan B here is, instead of going right to creating a thread, I'm going to come and draw another sketch, because it doesn't want to let me create a thread in the inside of here. My guess is, again, because I think there's all these weird geometry and fillets on the inside. So instead of creating a thread in this cylinder, I'm going to create a new cylinder. So I'll click on Create, and I'll come down to Create a Sketch. And as the object or the surface I'm going to create my sketch on, I'm going to choose this little edge, my little 2mm edge that I've got going on here. And now I can just draw a circle right in the middle of this, and 1.25. If I make it 1 1/4, I'll have a nice round number. There's probably a 1 1/4 inch thread pitch, 1 1/4 inch thread diameter. So just making, hopefully, just making that one circle on that sketch. You know what, I'm going to make two. I'm going to make the 1 1/4, and I'm going to make a 1 1/8 as well. Because we need the other side of our threads. So I made two circles. I made it a 1 1/4, and I made a 1 1/8. And now I'm just going to go ahead and say Finish Sketch. And I can look at the items that I just made there. So now if I come up to my Create menu and I choose Extrude, and I just extrude down this object, or this cylinder ring, a 1/2 inch, and I just say join. I'm going to join them together. Now I'm going to name this sketch. This sketch is my thread pipe, I'm going to call it. Thread pipe seems like a decent name for me. Future me will probably not think that past me was a complete idiot with that name. Now, fingers crossed, when I come up to Create and choose the thread option, hey, it's a Christmas miracle. So 1.25 inches. I'm going to make Mottled threads, that's looking pretty nice. Right hand is fine. And then for my final trick here, I'm going to turn off my bottom half, the body I called bottom half. I'm going to turn on the body I called my top half. I'm going to come and look underneath it, and I'm going to turn on my thread pipe. The thread pipe sketch that I made. Because now we have to make the other side of our threads, right? So here, if I just kind of illustrate what we got going on here, if I turn on that, this is kind of fun. You can turn on something called a section analysis, and I can kind of cut my object right in half. So we've got threads on one half of our shape, but we need the threads that protrude in the inside of there and do the other half. So I'm going to turn off my bottom half. I'll turn off this section analysis. And if I come to the extrude option, and I choose to extrude that outer ring only downwards, like 1/2 inch. I'm going to say join. And now I extrude again the inner ring, except the inner ring, instead of only going in one direction, I'm going to extrude this symmetrically. So we're making kind of the male end of our threads. And again, join is going to be the right option for me. And I say OK. Now we've got something to create our threads on. So if I come up to create, and then I'll come down to thread, and as soon as I come down to thread, I'll kind of take a walk around, see how you guys are doing. Oh, that's a problem. So it wants to create our threads. We don't have enough to make our threads with. We don't have enough meat on the inside of there, so we'll have to increase the diameter of the inner circle. Otherwise, we got nothing holding on to our threads. How you doing?
Hit a brick wall at a certain point.
Oh shit! I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, right on. Well, let me finish this up here, and then I'll see where your brick wall was at. So, I've got a slight problem here. These threads are not what we would call mechanically sound because they have nothing in the inside of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back to this thread pipe sketch and edit it, and instead of this being 1 1/8, it's going to be 1.0625, and there we go. That might be a little questionable. I can turn on my section analysis. Oh yeah, that is super questionable. Probably the thing to do here would be to come back to my bag size sketch inside of my, actually no, that's not true. To come back to my bone holder sketch and to change this width, instead of plus 1/2 inch, I'm going to add 5/8 inch. And then in my thread pipe, now this can go back to 1.1. Now that can go to 1? No. 1.0625. Because that made my outer bigger. Right? Let's look at actually what I changed here. I'm going to turn on these bodies. I'm going to go back to this component. So what I need to do is I need to make my whole threads need to be bigger. So the thing that I need to change is actually this thread here. Let's make it 0.375. And then this can be, that can be 1 1/8. And now that first thread, if I edit that feature, is there a 1 3/8 thread? There sure is. 1 3/8. And then this thread also is going to be, instead of 1 1/4, it's going to be 1 3/8. And I'm going to say OK. So now this is not lining up, but that is pretty normal with threads. And when you twist it together, who knows where it'll line up anyway. But that is the gist of it. We've got here. Let me turn off this analysis. We've got a bottom half that is nicely threaded, and if I turn on my analysis, there's not a whole lot of meat there, but you know, it's something. Something's better than nothing. In fact, we might be able to step up our thread size just a smidge, huh? What if we change this to 435, 4375, and then I change this also to 4375. That's looking much better. So there we go. So now we got an inner thread. And we've got an outer thread, and we've got a dog bag holder that we could totally 3D print, in theory. Now, here's the thing that I do with my threads, though, is 3D printed threads don't, well, if you just print this, those tolerances on a 3D printed thread is much different than if this were a machine thread, right? So what I like to do here, just as kind of a pro tip, is I go to my press pull command, and if I pick each one of these sides, the edges of this thread, this is kind of like the brute force method here. If I change that to like 0.02 inches and just expand it out, give a big, huge tolerance there. Here, I'll show you kind of what that does. Is if I take this and I rotate it so the threads line up nicely. There we go. So I added a big gap there, and that looks like a giant gap right now, but you really need a little bit of slop in your 3D printed threads. At least that's what I found. You can mess with that number just by changing edit the feature and change the press pull amount, but like 0.02 big gap for FDM printing, it seems like a good amount for me, for my printer. So for my cheap $200, Ender 3. So, all right, cool. So that is it for today. Now, oh, you know what we got to do? Sorry, missed a spot. We don't have an opening. for our bags to come out of. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a sketch. I'm going to draw it right there. I'm going to, which is the male end and which is the female end? I'm going to draw my threads. I'm just going to draw a hole that is 1/2 of an inch right down here. And then I'm just going to extrude that hole. Extrude that guy right out the bottom there. So now the way it'll work is you'll take a bag, you shove it through the hole down there, and then you'll thread the other end on, and then you'll be good to go. Can't believe we almost forgot to put a dispenser in our dog bone dispenser. All right, cool. That's it for this week. We will see you next week, Monday, for more Fusion 360 fun.